we go then. Welcome, everybody. Great to see you all. Welcome. As you're arriving, please put in the chat in traditional style a one-word check-in. What's your state of mind today? How are you feeling? What one word best sums up your being on this wonderful Tuesday? Welcome, everybody. If you're just arriving and you're seeing words fly into the chat, it's our traditional one-word check-in. What's your state of mind today? How are you feeling? How are you doing? Which one word best sums up yourself today? Please put it in the chat. Let's kick things off that way. Energized, Aaron, fantastic to hear. Ready, Annika. Terrific, Deborah. Wonderful. Inspired, curious, ×2. Okay. Keep entering those in the chat, guys. And without further ado, we're going to kick right off here. So, welcome to our third Flourishing Network meeting of 2024. It's wonderful as ever to see so many of you here. Many people will continue to join throughout this call. And I'm delighted to introduce you today to Noof Al Jenebi and Richard Appiah, who are going to lead today's session on promoting happiness and well-being, insights from the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Africa. And Noof is a quality of life and sustainability development advisor at the Ministry of Community Development in the United Arab Emirates and former director of the Emirates Center for Happiness Research at the UAE University, where she played a key role in establishing the region's first research center dedicated to happiness. Dr. Richard Appiah is assistant professor of psychology at Northumbria University and senior lecturer in the College of Health Sciences at the University of Ghana. And he recently completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard University's Center for African Studies. And we're extremely grateful for them to be here with us today, leading today's presentation on promoting happiness and well-being, insights from the United Arab Emirates and Africa. We're going to start with Richard's presentation, which will last about 30 minutes. There'll be some short time for questions after that, and then move into Noof's presentation. And there'll be then some short time for questions after that. Throughout this, please enter into the chat any questions you have. And if we don't get round to them, I will share them with Richard and Noof after today's talks. And maybe you can continue the dialogue with them. Without further ado, Richard, handing over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Can you please confirm if you can see my slides? Right. Thank you all for the invitation. So this is really going to be, in Africa, we are storytellers. It's going to be a short story, I hope. And I'm going to draw from a paper that I published towards the end of last year, musing on whether or not we can leverage African proverbs and ancient wisdom to promote flourishing and well-being. Right. So I'm going to provide some context on African research and interventions on positive psychology, and looking briefly on the challenges that confront research in Africa. Then I'll zoom into discussing two projects that one of which is currently active. And then back to how I think we can leverage African proverbs to promote well-being, and then end up probably with a framework that I proposed on how we can do this. So Karina Guse provides a bird's eye view of African research in terms of positive psychology. She scoped the literature in 2019 and found about 23 studies that reports designed and evaluated positive psychology research in Africa. A very small number compared to the global scope. But what intrigued me was the challenges that she and the recommendations that she made. She contends, for instance, that it was unclear whether the existing interventions were adapted to suit the cultural context of Africa. And she argued, based on the and then the so-called divide between collectivistic African context and more individualistic Western context. Most of the studies were also centered in South Africa, rightly so, because the only institution that offers positive psychology, and that's positive psychology research in Africa, is based in South Africa, where I trained. And most of the interventions, again, were focused on adults neglecting children and the youth. But what was more worrying was that there were no RCTs and longitudinal studies, which were important to tell whether interventions were effective or not. Well, so in 2020, we took up a challenge with colleagues, and we set out to explore whether we could formulate a group-based, multi-component positive psychology intervention, which could bolster mental health, build resilience, and increase vocational productivity in rural poor adults in Ghana. We followed the Medical Research Council's framework for developing and evaluating complex interventions through a 7-step iterative process. I wouldn't bore you with that. But we went into the communities to, for instance, do cognitive appraisal for participants, members of the communities and community leaders, to share their views on the content, the structure, and the implementation strategies. And you could clearly see how positive psychology and psychology in general principles can be translated into practical interventions and models to cause changes. And you could see the smiles on their faces and how they relate. And follow-up studies showed how impactful it's been to them. The first project is called the Inspired Life Program. We drew on construct positive psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy, 10 sessions from introduction through self-acceptance, kindness and compassion, positive relationship, a meaningful and purposeful life, fruitful living, how to identify and challenge on thinking patterns, how to become resilient, and so on and so forth. We implemented the program within a quasi-randomized control trial across 4 communities with 84 participants, meeting weekly 2-hourly sessions, 10 in a group, to discuss, to practicalize the activities. Very interesting findings and very promising, but were not unexpected. Greater improvements in positive mental health across all the measurement outcomes, reduction in depression and negative affects, and more importantly, increase in flourishes, proportion of flourishes, of course, in the intervention group compared with the control group. We needed to, for instance, have separate sessions for male participants and the female participants. These were rural, very remote, as you could see from the picture. By the way, we had permissions from participants to use these pictures in our presentations. And for in some communities, very highly patriarchal, you will have females becoming more aloof and withdrawn, when in conversations or in the midst of men. So we needed to hold separate sessions for the gender groups. We also provided them with certificates at the end of the 10 weeks, just so they could hang in their walls, in their rooms, to help them remember that they were part of an intervention program, and to continue to draw on their lessons and insights, and to even help themselves and others. Currently, we have a similar project ongoing, and we followed a similar methodological approach to design. We call the Pimpamsie family program. Pimpamsie is a Ghanaian Adinkra symbol. Is to weave nest together, to put together a nest, or weave together a nest to preserve, and it's meant for families. So we have about 2,400 participants from 1,200 households who are parents and the adolescent children. And the goal is to teach them and practicalize skills in positive relationship and communication, and teach them skills to identify and manage individual and family stress, and in particular teach parents how to adopt non-violent strategies to manage adolescent problem behaviors. The overarching goal is to promote family well-being and education as well. This is also ongoing. To run until the end of the year. So each week we meet in 10 communities concurrently with families, children, and adolescent children and their caregivers who may not be their biological, could be your auntie or your grandmother that you are staying with, and to learn these skills and to practicalize them. Over the period, I have also been involved in other projects, similar community-based projects, and most of the interventions, like Buse said, were directly imported. And we also are aware about the weird and the weirdness of positive psychology and behavior change interventions, and the challenges with directly importing such interventions in other contexts. A year or so, 2 years ago, I wrote a paper discussing how some of the interventions developed outside of the African context may not be so effective in the African context because because of the values, the unique values and virtues shared across Africa, which is itself a strength because most of these values are parallel with positive psychology values and virtues themselves. But there are cogent arguments. For instance, we know about the wide divide, so-called divide between individualistic Western settings, social orientations, emphasis on autonomy, and then the more collectivistic, communal African settings where people are more collectivistic, and so values like autonomy will not really stand out, and people are not in a rush to draw on resources that are meant for the community, for instance, and they would rather share that notion. And so the conversation on then, if this is the case and it's very empirical in the literature, what would an intervention be in Africa that could be so effective? What are some of the values? And that led me to this paper. In last July in the UK, I attended a Ghanaian wedding, and at the end of the wedding, which is typical, so common in Africa, in Ghana, the people, the families were asked to advise the couple, and you have two people from both sides sharing some advice, and at the end of each person's speech is a proverb. They will end the speech with a proverb, and that struck me. So you could summarize all that you said in a single proverb, and that proverb really resonates with everyone seated there, and that is what you carry along. And I remember during my own wedding, I could remember one or two of such proverbs that were said. It's almost the case, and so that set me to explore more and to write this paper. But then I became even more convinced that maybe this is a medium that we can explore further and that we can use to convey messages to participants, particularly those in peri-urban rural settings who are very, who share, unique cultural values and settings, So we know from the literature that most African societies preserve their traditions through oral rather than written communication. And so that really essentially forced them to ensure that these communications are brief and rich, and filled with humor and symbolism, that imagery that could easily be remembered. It is also the case that when you stand to speak as an elder in a community, you essentially will have to bring in one or two proverbs that suits the occasion, and that shows that you are wise. So if I sit with a group of adults, probably older than me, and I'm able to chip in one or two proverbs that suits the occasion, they will not and consider me as a promising, wise, son of the land. But what was more interesting was that there was a growing number of local television and radio stations across Ghana that offer, and I heard it's same in a few other African countries, that were offering time slots for individuals and groups to call in, phone-in sessions to complete proverbs. And if you do so for a number of proverbs, you can win a call credit or something, So it looks even more promising and interesting. And then you find that this cut transcends across Africa and not just Ghana or West Africa. And in Rwanda, there's a proverb that says that when the occasion arises, there's a proverb that suits it, emphasizing the scope and how wide it's possible to have a proverb suitable for every occasion. In Ethiopia, speech without proverb is like food without salt. And who wouldn't want to eat without salt? Africans are they are particular about their food, probably too much salt, causing probably hypertension and all that. But that is for another day. But the point is that proverbs are as important as salt in food. In Ghana, same. Proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten. We eat palm fruits, use it for soup, for stew, and you can imagine proverb has been equated to that. So I came across quite a number of books chronicling hundreds, if not thousands, of African proverbs. And the first one, Bumi Bear, Proverbs of the Africans, Akans. The Akans are the largest ethnic groups in Ghana. And this has over 6,000 or so proverbs with interpretations and classified according to certain values, loosely though. There are also proverbs on even African love, quite a number of them. That means makes it very potential. So keeping an eye on the time, in the next few minutes, what I'm going to do is to take you through a few of them and how the theme and their literal meaning and how I think they could potentially be used in enriching and strengthening interventions and communicating same to participants. So when you gather firewood, you invite others to light their fire. Firewood is very common in Africa. Again, this has nothing to do with cutting down trees and depleting the ozone layer. I mean, most of the African peoples in Ghana, about 48% of the people who live in rural settings, who are agrarian, go clear their lands. And so in the process, they get firewood. If I gather my firewood, I gather to set fire. You can pick a stick, put in my fire, that will light, and you take it along to your home to set your own fire. And this is imagery, but powerful. So essentially means that we should be willing to share and support others. This can have implications and facilitate intervention sessions that are meant to communicate, sharing knowledge, sharing insight, learning together, collaboration, and those sort of things. So you can come in and whole write-up about how to set, how to encourage people to collaborate. They will, of course, understand if it's in the local dialect. But then I walk in with this proverb, and this resonates with them much more. If someone likes you, it is because they remember the past, positive relationships. And we have interventions focused on ensuring, fostering, boosting positive relationships, it essentially means that we thrive, our relationship thrives on shared memories, and we have positive psychology interventions encouraging participants to recall, have an introspect, some shared memories to help them feel better about themselves. This can be used to encourage participants to reflect positive relationships and memories and experiences that they have had, and we know the science behind when that happens. So we move from positive relationship to kindness. So a kind gesture can reach a wound that only compassion can heal. And what this means is that, of course, people have emotional wounds, and kindness, acts of kindness can be a source of support and comfort to them. And this can be used to promote empathy, compassion, support, which is already a highly prized, value and virtue in the more collectivistic African context. But this proverb makes that so succinct and short. The sun does not forget a village just because it is small. Again, kindness and empathy. Everyone deserves recognition, respect, and kindness. Africans are very, just be mindful. So Africans like appellations. I go to the US, I go to the UK, and it's Richard. I'm currently speaking from Ghana. I come to Ghana as Dr. Appiah, and I have to call my colleagues Dr. this, Professor that, And so, but not everyone gets to be doctor and a professor. And so it's likely that people can trample upon the rights of others. But this proverb can stand out to say, no, there's need for inclusivity, respect, appreciation of diversity. One hand washes the other, and together they wash the face. Teamwork, collaboration. We can achieve a lot by working together, mutual support. And again, this is highly prized in Africa. People go in the rural settings, you go help me on my farm, clear my weeds, harvest my crops. The next day, I follow you to yours to do the same, probably with my entire family. And so there's that mutual cooperation. And this proverb can be used to facilitate, acts of kindness towards helping others. When you help another up a hill, you get to the top yourself. And I've heard this proverb over and over before growing up. And they will say that when I push you to climb the hill, I probably was just trying to help you climb, but then I find myself also on top of the hill, which to me is powerful, supporting others to achieve their goals. Ultimately, supports ourselves, helps ourselves to do same. And this can be used to encourage participants to engage in behaviors that uplift and assist others. Maybe but for the sake of time, I will have asked if someone can interpret this for us and tell how this can be integrated into an intervention program. The rain that beats you also waters your neighbor's farm. I met a friend in Boston last year while completing my postdoc, and he said, "Oh, you're from Ghana? I was in Ghana 2 weeks ago, and the rain beats. The rain is so heavy," which is true. In the UK, if it's 80% raining, you can just walk through. In Ghana, the rain really beats. It's so heavy, it can hit your back, But so I'm wet, I'm walking, the rain is beating me. But then I remember that, well, I just passed by a farm, and the farmer may need water for the crop, so gratitude. Even when you are facing challenges and difficulties, it's possible that someone else is benefiting from the circumstance. And so this can be used to emphasize a win-win, sense of empathy, altruism, and those sort of things. If you work slowly and carefully scanning the ant, you see its intestines. Patience, humility, we should be thorough, we should be particular with details. And in the African context, especially in the small rural communities, everyone is responsible for everyone. So an adult can call you, doesn't know you, and caution you, this won't help you, this won't help your future, do this, this is not good for you and for everyone in this community. And they can look for your parents and go to their homes to report you to them, right? Anyway, so this can be used to teach problem-solving skills, engagement, critical thinking, time management skills, and skills that engagement that require people to be thorough and to think deeply in what they do before taking stance and actions. The crab crawls backwards, but it never forgets. Again, humility and patience. In moments of advancement and success, we should remain humble. It's so clear when working with individuals and groups who are socioeconomically deprived. You always jump into a celebratory mood for every small success, and it can become very counter. So you can chop a success and easily lose it because everyone joins you in celebrating, and so you lose focus. And so this can be used to self-awareness, humility, and growth. I suggested 5 ways by which we can integrate African proverbs into interventions. Firstly, we need to identify context-relevant positive psychology themes. There are several hundreds and thousands of African proverbs, and this needs to be matched with specific positive psychology values and virtues as a starter. And then we need to select, the proverb, interpret and translate. And this may require engaging with experts, community leaders, and other people who have some expertise in doing that. Sometimes community leaders, chiefs and community elders who sit in a research committee, within a research committee approach, to say, this is what this proverb means, and this is how it can be applied, And then, of course, we integrate the proverb into the PPI. For instance, if you are engaging with a group, within a group-based session, we have the initial parts, we have the main session and the closing. You may have a plenary, you might have a breakout session. And so you then have to decide the structure and the implementation strategy, and when and which proverb should be used at what point in time. And then we need to pilot test and evaluate the interventions and whether it really resonates. And then there's need for long-term sustainability. This probably is my last slide. I'm a bit passionate about this, and I think it's promising and fructuous. And so I'll be happy for any collaboration and probably to secure funding to pilot test. There are quite a number of ethnic groups in Ghana and across Africa who have shared and very distinct cultures and proverbs. And so a proverb may not all proverbs will be very effectively used in interventions across the context. So we need to pilot test that. But the overarching goal is to have a repository where people can draw from, so this is more like a tool where you can draw from to engage participants, incorporate into your intervention to engage participants. Our ongoing projects, we aim to send SMS text messages as boosters, and although they will come in for in-person sessions once a week or so, they receive text messages, and these proverbs can be a good way to send in addition to the intervention content, to simplify and to encourage. Thank you for your attention. I can be reached through this email addresses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard, for a great presentation. Please all give a round of applause for Richard for that fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. All right, Richard, we got several questions in the chat. We'll try to get, we can allow like sort of 6 minutes for questions here before we go to Nurse presentation. So I'm just going to take them in the order in which they've come up in the chat, and any we don't get to, I'll circulate to the speakers afterwards. So first up from Aaron Hull. I want to invite the people who put these questions in the chat just to actually say them themselves rather than me read them out. Aaron, can you hear me? And do you want to unmute and ask a question, Richard, yourself?
Yes, thank you. Awesome presentation. I really appreciated what you were sharing. I love the Proverbs, especially. I was curious about, when you first started talking about the participants, especially the adult participants at the beginning of your presentation. How did you recruit these participants? What was their incentive for being there? How did they hear about it? Just kind of background of I'd like to know how you found people to participate. I think it was 84 people that you had participating in that.
Right. It's recruiting participants in this context takes on some distinct strategy compared to the traditional research. I think I have a paper or two on that. You need to do a community entry. It's just like you go to an institution and say, yes, I want to conduct a research. This is a gatekeeper. So the chiefs, council of elders, the assembly members are gatekeepers. And we need to, you go to the chief's palace, not empty-handed, just like you go to the queen and present bottles of schnapps and say, this is what we are here to do. And they ask you questions and to determine whether your research is relevant for the community. And then when they think it is, and they may announce, if it's a small community, they say gong bita, they still do that. But we say, oh, when you do that, that influences participation. We would like to go to the homes ourselves. In one of the pictures you saw, only female with only a man sitting at the back. The chief said, this is a good research for our community, but we cannot allow you to go sit alone with our wives. So a council of the elders, a male was sitting, he wouldn't talk, just to observe and report back to me. So there are cultural nuanced, cultural and ethical cultural issues, implementation issues, once they do not subvert the ethical principles of research, and this should be respected, and we allow them to do that. So when you do that, then you can go to a home with an independent mediator to introduce the research team. And of course, if they are not working on their farms, then they are happy to join. The whole year they've been sitting at home, going to the farm. It's not a farming season. This may be interesting. I'm happy to join. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, for your question. Next up is Sandy Pellerinano. Would you like to go, Sandy?
Hi there. Hi, John. Hi, Richard. I think that was a perfect segue into my question, and you may have just answered my question because I was looking at the participants pictured, and you had the male group and the female group, and there were some men pictured in the photo, and so I was wondering if they were facilitators or and how you sort of mitigated the dynamics in that group so that the female participants felt comfortable sharing, because I know you mentioned that that's why you separated them in the first place. And so I think you already basically spoke to that. It sounded like there were kind of chaperones there. And so, yeah.
That picture was from the pilot phase. Where we were doing cognitive appraisal. So we needed them to speak to the teams. We want to do self-acceptance. What does that mean to you? How can this be conveyed? And so we really needed, it was part of the program development phase. And this is a community that the chief says, I'm so happy, I won't let you go. But I'm aware if you sit these two gender groups, the women may be aloof and withdrawn and shy. And it's a cultural thing anyway. But I will not also be comfortable, allowing you. So the other people you see, there's myself and another independent co-researcher. So we'll have there are other few cultural issues that were very fascinating, but that is what we're talking about, right? Ethics dumping. If I say no, and I force my way out, would that be, isn't that breaching their rights, their ethical rights and cultural rights, as long as that does not, breach the standard ethical principles? And so this is, I just published a paper on how we balance research ethics with culture, drawing from this scoping review. Yeah, so not just in Africa, parts of Asia, they have their indigenous groups, and we just have to find a way to respect their culture and values and norms.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sandy, for your question. Thank you, Richard, for your answers to these questions. Well, right. I would love to keep pitching more questions here to Richard, but we're 35 minutes into the hour, and we have a second presentation in today's session. So any questions in the chat there, I will send to the speakers, or maybe if we have time at the end, might be time to discuss them. But we're going to now move into our second presentation today. So I'm delighted to introduce Noof Al Jenebi for second presentation in this set of presentations on promoting happiness and wellbeing insights from UAE and Africa. We're moving from Africa here to the UAE. And Noof is Quality of Life and Sustainability Development Advisor at the Ministry of Community Development in the UAE and former Director of the Emirates Centre for Happiness Research at UAE University. Noof, over to you.
Thank you, John, for the invitation, especially in the holy month of Ramadan. So Ramadan Mubarak to those who celebrate Ramadan. Let me share my presentation and hopefully it will work. For some reason, I'm having difficulty sharing the presentation. Just a second. Okay, let me give it a try again. Perfect. So just to give you a background story, my presentation may not have as much as depth in academia part where I actually share a lot of research. Some of the work that we have done within the government, the data and the research and all of the academic work, I don't have the privilege to share it in public, but I'm hoping through my talk is to give you a glimpse of what the efforts that my government tried its best to make UAE as the happiest nation. And another story that I would like to share. So when I was preparing this presentation, I was preparing it with my niece, who's 7 years old. So all the funky background that you're seeing is her choice. And I wanted to have that touch because she loved my work and she loved being in academic setup. And I thought, why not? So I'll give you a brief introduction about myself. John, I think he has done quite a good job here. Why isn't it going somewhere? Just a second, sorry. And then we'll talk about the journey of happiness in my country and how the interest of happiness actually was started in UAE. We'll talk about certain initiative and I'll be focusing more on workplace, education, and health sector initiatives. Of course, there isn't any journey without having challenges on implementation, positive psychology, or designs itself. And then where's the UAE now from implementing well-being? I know a lot of people knows that we previously had a Minister of Happiness, but now we don't anymore. Does that mean the government is not taking care of well-being or not? So I'm working currently with the Ministry of Community Development. The ministry took care of the well-being portfolio for quite some time, just to ensure the sustainability of implementation of well-being portfolio in the country. And I'll share the story why the portfolio moved from the Prime Minister office to the ministry. I served previously as a director of Emirates Center for Happiness Research. And my research interest is definitely in employee well-being, trying to implement or promote well-being in education system. And currently I'm heavily working on creating parenting programs to ensure that the positive psychology is actually taught from early age and to build a cohesive family, so to say. I have the responsibility to correct an information in every conference or forum or online setup, explaining to people when they ask me where you're from, Every time I say United Arab Emirates, they give me that look that they don't know where that country is. So I would say, do you know where Dubai is? And everyone was like, yeah, we know where Dubai is. Okay, so Dubai is a city, UAE is a country. Just as a general information, I thought it would be really interesting to share with everyone. So the journey of happiness and well-being actually started back in 2016 when our Vice President, His Highness Mohammed bin Rashid, appointed a Minister of Happiness and Well-being. And the previous title for her was the Minister of Happiness and Positivity. Later on, it has changed from happiness and positivity to happiness and well-being, which was changed according to the academic council that she was relying on to consult with. And under the minister herself, there is something called the National Program for Happiness and Positivity. So we don't have a Ministry of Happiness and Positivity. A lot of people thought that. But what we have is something called the program. And the program operates in a way that is similar to a Ministry of Happiness and Wellbeing. As I mentioned, the naming has changed after Her Excellency chooses to consult with her academic council, and they've thought that changing from positivity of well-being is more comprehensive. It gives a really valuable insight, and that's more of kind of a wording that really relates to the work that the government is trying to do. Later on in 2020, we don't have anymore a Minister of Happiness and Wellbeing. What we have is only the program itself, and the whole portfolio moved to Ministry of Community Development. A lot of speculation has been around that, okay, it has been a trend and now the government is not taking care of well-being. But the answer to that doubt was our government wanted to know and wanted to make sure the foundation of the science itself, the foundation of implementation of well-being has been done correctly during the last 4 years. And moving it to the community, it means that the government needs the community as well to collaborate with the government to make sure that the implementation of the science of well-being is not only done by one side, it's actually done by two sides collectively. So the National Program for Happiness and Wellbeing, as I mentioned, works as a ministry setup. And the main objective is to inspire people, the government, and broader community, the UAE and internationally, to aim for a more meaningful life. And to ensure engaging all the stakeholders or all the pillars, the initiatives focused on community level, government level, and international level. Here are some examples of the initiatives that were done under these three pillars. So within the community level, we have something called the National Survey for Happiness and Wellbeing, which is done on a yearly basis, trying to measure the well-being of different emirates. You know, in our country, we, as in the US, you guys have states, we have something called emirates, and we have 7 emirates. So the survey is trying to measure the level of well-being in each emirate, and also measuring the level of safety, the level of services that is provided for the community, and so on and so forth. And based on the data that they are gaining from the community themselves and the people, the government try to initiate sort of like programs or enhance certain services to make sure that is aligned with what the people are expecting. The survey covers both the UAE national individuals as well as people who lives in UAE regardless of their nationality. The second initiative, which I think is quite interesting, is Happiness Journey. It is one-day event, and in this event, the government is trying to co-create initiatives or programs with people. The way of selecting people, of course, is that there will be on a government portal an announcement about the happiness journey and what theme of that journey is going to be. So, for instance, in 2019, the theme was to promote healthier lifestyle. And they have recruited people through the portal. So people sign up for that event, they come over, they share the struggle. For instance, if the certain there isn't enough facility to practice a sport, they need to have more gym at workplace, etc. So the government takes all the feedback from people and try to, again, serve them the way that they hoped to be served. Some initiatives were done and they have been completed. Other initiatives, it took actually quite some time. One of the examples is having a cycling track in all of the 7 Emirates. You'll see a lot of cycling tracks in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, but you wouldn't see them much in other Emirates. That would because each emirate has its different dynamics, so it took quite some time to implement that. Happiness meter is a mandatory meter that is offered in customer service centers, which has been renamed to happiness centers, where if you're applying for any governmental services, you measure how happy or satisfied you are with the service. Last is Well School Network. I'll be talking about it as I delve deeper in the implementation of positive psychology within the education sector. In terms of government, we have something called the Chief of Happiness and Wellbeing Network. Those are individuals who are from federal entities. They're presenting their entities and they come to the Prime Minister office. Of course, they have been selected on certain criteria, a number of years experience, their willingness to change and their willingness to learn and teach others on positive psychology or well-being. They go through a very intensive training. They're from, as I mentioned, from federal entities, and they would bring a lot of scholars to come and teach them. I believe the Prime Minister office had an agreement with UC Berkeley to provide that training at certain year. But currently, I think they're asked to take the courses online, if I'm not mistaken. Second is the Happiness and Positivity Champion Medal. It's an award that is given to those who provide services to people, just to make sure that their efforts are being noticed. So it's not you only as a customer, you have the privilege just to give a feedback on happiness meter, but you who provide that service also will be recognized by the government. And I think this is one of a powerful way to appreciate people's, hardworking and how much they are dedicating to give the best services to people. On international level, we have Happiness Dialogue. If some of you have attended the World Government Summit, which is it's a yearly summit that talks about certain topics regarding the government. There is a specific dialogue that is covering only well-being, implementation of well-being on different nationalities or different nations. And we have Happiness Council, in which that has a lot of scholars also from different countries, different schools as well. I believe we have a couple of people from Penn, UC Berkeley, Harvard, and Yale. I don't have the list of the scholars' names, but I'm happy to share if anyone is interested. Now, to speak about the education initiatives that the government did, the government believed that it is important to educate the students on an early age on concepts that are related to well-being for students to make sure that they have a fulfilling life, meaningful life, etc. And so there was a course that was developed for governmental schools, because we have a different school system in the country. So we have a private school and we have a governmental school, and under a governmental school there are also different subcategories. The moral education focuses on 4 elements. In the below graph right here, it focuses on character morality, individual community, civic studies, and cultural studies. What's interesting about the moral education course that it really integrated a lot of concept from the traditional Emirati traditional aspects, the religion as well, and teaching it in a way that it really resonates with the students, with an Emirati student. And this course, as I mentioned, is only offered by governmental school, and most of students who attended governmental schools are Emirati. The second program was only meant for college students, called Meaningful Life. This program was developed by the Prime Minister Office team, and their idea was to teach students who are about to graduate how to live a meaningful life, how to use the passion, your major, to again, to live a meaningful life. The program actually lasted for 2 years, and then it has changed afterwards, as all universities are now being asked to offer a course that called Happiness and Wellbeing course. So you will see this course is actually offered by all universities across the UAE, especially the governmental or the federal universities. Private universities started now to implement that course. Wellbeing Census is an initiative that has been done by the Knowledge Authority in Dubai only. And Wellbeing Census is a yearly survey that is sent out to all private schools in Dubai only, just to see what affects students' well-being, how can that be used to alter some courses, probably initiatives, and even help the parents and the teachers as well. Moving on with the education initiative, the Will School Network is a network that was created again by the Prime Minister Office, which actually help the schools, and mostly their public school or governmental school, to be part of what is called Will School Network. What the Prime Minister Office offers these schools is grants to bring in the best trainer to train the teachers how to implement positive psychology, following up with them in terms of implementing the science itself among students and staff. And they provide also consultation. And then after providing all the educational part or teaching part, they would just make sure if they're implementing it right, then they go to the level of giving them the Well School mark. So it's like an awarding the school that actually uses the information from the provider, who provide all the information about the well-being and positive psychology at school, and making sure that actually it affects the students and the teachers' well-being. The Well School Network initiative actually has been created after research called Positive Education Research that I had the privilege to be part of. It was a collaboration between the Ministry of Education, University of Melbourne, and UAE University. With the findings, unfortunately, of course, I don't have the privilege to share it, but using the findings, one of the initiatives that came out from this research is establishing Will School Network, as well as updating a couple of courses within the schools to matches the finding from the research. The workplace initiatives, one of the area that the government really focused a lot on when they started implementing positive psychology. They have created a guide to happiness and well-being at workplace. I'm happy to share a copy of it. It's actually available on happyuae.com. That's the official portal of happiness and well-being, the National Program for Happiness and Well-being of our government. And they also have an initiative called Back to School Policy, which means you are given 3 hours off the first day of your kid's school, so you can accompany your kid and be there with them. There are some workplaces that gives actually a day off, just to make sure that the parents are with their children on their first day of school. The Government Best Practices Forum, which one of my favorite forum is actually to share the best practices and challenges as well on how to implement well-being at workplace. What's the findings? How did it go? What things went right and what things went wrong? And I think having that forum and having that platform, people will share their experiences, is a powerful tool to learn from each other and work collectively. Currently, the government is actually also focusing a lot on something called parent-friendly workplace initiatives. And one of the authorities in Abu Dhabi, the capital of UAE, has started this initiative called Parent-Friendly Label. It's like giving an award to workplaces that promotes sort of support to the parents, like flexible working hours, having a friendly areas for those who doesn't, like a nursery or a daycare at workplace, anything that really gives the parents the comfortability to work in peace and knowing that they can have sort of like a work-life balance involved in that. Last sector is the healthcare sector. The most challenging sector, of course, and I believe it's a case for everyone. We have a special services that is provided for handicapped people. In our country, we have renamed those category to people of determination, just to give them the empowerment that they actually matter and they do have the power to give back to the community. We have also mobilized clinics for senior citizens or elderly people. Again, this terminology is shifted from elderly people to senior citizens in the UAE. The preventive healthcare services like cancer, diabetes examination are offered for free for people in the UAE. And some clinics, because there, again, we have a lot of differences in type of clinics. There's like governmental and we have private, but most of those examinations are offered for people for free. Telemedicine is available for those who lives in our rural areas in UAE. And Doctor for Every Citizen. Doctor for Every Citizen is an initiative, is only available in Dubai, not across UAE. It's one of the initiatives that started by Dubai Health Authority. In each emirate, we have a different authority that takes care of health sector in general. So in general, the healthcare sector initiatives are basing its services to make sure that it reaches as much as people as possible, and trying to include people of determination and elderly people or people who lived far further away from the cities. So how are we doing, or what went well? We love that knowing that the leaders are with us along the way. You'll see a lot of our royal family taking initiative and talking about certain initiatives that gives the people the message that this is something important. For instance, currently our president talks a lot about the importance of family. You'll see a lot of governmental entities now giving the flexibility to parents to make sure that they are having the comfortability to work, knowing that they will have enough time to spend with their children. Engaging community, as I mentioned, like the happiness journey is making sure that it's not only the government designing initiatives and forcing people to implement them, but it's actually engaging communities by the surveys, the yearly survey, happiness journey, or any other platforms where people can actually share their thoughts. The raise of awareness among people and importance of well-being. There's a huge increase in interest in studying what's the science of well-being. We've seen a lot of more publications for individuals from UAE studying the effect of implementing well-being at workplace in the UAE. Governmental entities focusing on their team well-being is something that actually also makes us happy that, yes, there is an effectiveness of those initiatives, so on. With every story, there's definitely a lot of challenges. The first one is the investment, the amount of investment on programs and research to ensure its effectiveness and sustainability. And we've seen also a lot of confusion between the practitioners, life coaches and well-being, life coaches, therapists and practitioners. And when the government focused on happiness and well-being, all of a sudden everyone renamed their titles to happiness ambassadors or happiness experts, etc. And I think this has been a global challenge, as I was seeing from posts and different articles. But what happened is with those individuals, they really raised what is called the toxic positivity, and I'm sure a lot of you knows the terminology. Number 3, dependency on others for happiness. We have a program where you can call and share your concern, regardless of your concern, to the government. It's a radio program, of course, but a lot of governmental individuals tend to those programs. And one of the things that we have noticed is that whenever there is a challenge, regardless of the challenge, there's always a dependency on others to make them happy. And others, I mean the government. For instance, if they haven't gotten the raise on that particular year, it's the government fault. If there is a bad weather, it's a government fault. So we've seen those comments are coming from people, which means that we have not probably invested some time or quite a good time educating people. What's your responsibility as an individual? What's the government responsibility? Next is the duplication of efforts and the confusion that happens. Within the setup of the government, we have a lot of differences here. So we have what is called the federal authority or federal government, and we have a local government, and we have private sector. And each one of those sectors are trying to prove that they're doing the right in terms of promoting happiness and well-being. But then you realize that they are duplicating the same effort for the same purpose, for the same group of people. And it really sometimes causes a loss of resources and time. More challenges is measuring the effectiveness. We've noticed also when we started the movement of happiness and well-being in my country is that I believe that the government should have taken quite some time to measure the effectiveness just to ensure the sustainability of these initiatives. And some initiatives were not adherence to the culture norms and the traditional of the UAE. And I think our tradition in religion is rich with concepts that really, really resonate with positive psychology. And to give you an example, when we conducted the positive psychology, positive education research, we've sent out a couple of trainers who are from Melbourne University, and we believe they are really well trainers. And when they started talking about concept relates to mindfulness, relates to self-care, etc., one of the teachers raised her hand and complaining was saying, why would you bring someone who's not from our culture to teach us things that we practice it on a daily basis in our religion? And it really got us thinking, probably we should think about who should provide those trainers and how can we link the gap between the culture norms and the tradition into these concepts and help them having the thinking that, yes, it's part of my daily life, but probably I'm not paying attention to, but now it makes sense because there's a science backed up after it. Using the science to build a solid foundation for any initiative. Some of the initiatives were built according to the feedback from the people, but we hoped that if there was more research around it to make sure that it builds a solid foundation. So where's the UAE now? There's a huge movement on availability of mental health insurance, which I think it's a great thing to do. Having a therapy session quite costly, but having the insurance to cover that aspect is important. The government is actually also focusing on family cohesion concept. As I mentioned, the president is talking a lot about it. Digital well-being, everything is digitalized internationally. The government is paying attention to promote a healthy use of digital technology. And collective responsibility, as I mentioned, having the profile of happiness and well-being under the Ministry of Community Development ensures that it's a collectivist effort among everyone. I'll leave you with the quote from His Highness Mohammed bin Rashid, the guy behind the idea of happiness and well-being in UAE, is to ensure that we create hope and life and happiness for everyone. Thank you for your time, and I'm so sorry I took 5 minutes extra from the time that I'm allowed to talk. You can reach out to me through email address, my personal or my work email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noof. Can we please give a round of applause to Noof, everyone? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are a bit over time and several people have had to leave the call. There's several questions in the chat. What I will do though is I've shared Richard's and Noof's email addresses in the chat, so you have those there, and I'll share the chat file with them after this call so they can perhaps get back to any of you with responses to your questions. And this video and the Zoom chat will be available in the folder I circulate to all of you in the next email. So thank you to Richard and to Noof today for an excellent session. The April session will be a symposium on the economics of well-being for slightly longer, for 90 minutes. Information will be circulated about that in a couple of weeks' time by me. Thank you all of you for joining us today, especially to our speakers. Have a wonderful time the next 4 weeks till we see you again, and continue to flourish. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.